Right now at 2:30, the Carolinas buckling down as Debby edges closer, bringing heavy rains. What you need to know to keep your family safe.
Plus, we are learning new details following our investigation into coal ash near Iredell County daycare. The new concerns from parents as the facility is now taking action.
And as we speak, the best of the best are competing for the gold. But a lot of you are asking, why aren't you seeing any of the actual medal ceremonies? We verify.
Thank you for joining us here at 2:30. I'm Nick Sturdivant.
And I'm Jane Monreal. Let's head over to the Weather Center. First, a look at the uptown area because we've seen this day after day now. Clouds moving in. Not too much rain, though. Yet.
Yeah. Well, let's bring in meteorologist Brittany Van Voorhees. Brittany, as we know, Debby is almost here. What can we expect?
Well, the biggest impact we know is going to be heavy rain from this system, and we're actually starting to see some of the outermost bands from Debby already starting to approach places like Chesterfield County and eastern parts of Richmond County. This is the latest update here from the National Hurricane Center. We do have Tropical Storm Debby as a tropical storm as of the 2 p.m. advisory is still expected to wobble a little bit as it continues to move inland. Remember, we've talked a lot about this the past few days, but there's no steering currents to really move Debby, and that's why there's still a little bit of uncertainty. I mean, a general shift ever so slightly to the east could mean heavy rain in Charlotte versus heavy rain only east of the city. So make sure you're staying tuned with the latest updates here. Again, that storm expected to weaken as it moves inland. But you'll notice over the next few days that track will trim back more and more. Something else that's trimmed back, of course, is our rainfall expectations. While some of this has moved away from the immediate coast, we are not seeing quite as much rain as expected before. 2 to 4 inches from the west and northwest there of I-77, 3 to 6 inches for areas east and southeast of Charlotte. The important thing to note here is we have seen so much rain over the past few weeks. We've had already flood advisories, flash flood warnings in effect across portions of our local area. So if you live in a region that is prone to flooding, you know that your backyard, let's say, starts to pick up really quickly when we have that heavy rain. You're the areas that especially need to be mindful of this. Thankfully, some of our higher elevation areas in the mountains won't see quite as much rain impact. Here's the latest satellite. Again, you can see some of those outer bands here of Debby reaching areas. Here we are, Chesterfield County, some pockets of heavy rain. A flood advisory in effect there just west of Bennettsville, so right near our area. What that tells me is these outermost bands have a lot of really heavy rain. Remember, tropical downpours can accumulate a lot of rain very quickly. Coming up throughout the show, we'll take a closer look at the latest futurecast and when we're expecting all of these impacts to be out of the area.
All right, thank you, Brittany. School districts are making adjustments as we brace for the impacts of Debby. Tomorrow, Chesterfield Schools is switching to remote learning. For Rowan, Salisbury, the first day of school is canceled. As of now, students are expected to return to the classroom Friday. In Stanley County, all classes are canceled tomorrow and Friday, so school will start Monday. You can keep up with the latest school changes on our website, WCNC.com. Well, starting today, North Carolina will now be able to use federal funding to address Debby's impacts. President Joe Biden approved the funding today, which now lets FEMA step in to help.
Well, this comes as Governor Roy Cooper declared a state of emergency this week. That emergency plan does 3 things. It lifts some trucking requirements to make sure essential supplies can get to where they need to go. It also outlaws price gouging for needed supplies, and it opens up the possibility of state reimbursement for city and county crews working during that time.
A state of emergency says that, hey, we know we're going to be responding to this, and this kind of delineates that time that we're responding to the incident. We are devoting staff time, we're devoting resources.
And just hours ago, Governor Roy Cooper announcing 350 soldiers and airmen from the State National Guard have been deployed, as well as swift water rescue teams along the coast. We also took a moment to share some vital advice.
Remember, never drive through flooded roads or around barricades. It only takes 6 inches of fast-moving flood water to knock over an adult and just 12 inches to carry away most cars. Now is not the time to see if your car floats, because it doesn't. It's not safe to drive or walk through floodwaters.
The governor says North Carolina's years of experience with flooding has helped tremendously in preparing for storms like Debby.
Meantime, as we speak, South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster is giving an update on how the state is handling the impacts from Debby. Earlier today, Charleston lifted its curfew. State emergency management officials say the safety protocols are saving lives.
And right now, the race is on in our area to prepare. WCNC Charlotte's Richard Devane has more.
Good afternoon. As you can see, the wind is beginning to pick up. The rain is starting to fall in parts of our area, but further to the east, they've already started getting prepared for whatever Debby may bring. Now, down in Anson County, over in Union County, and other counties south of us, like Chesterfield, folks say they're doing what they can, expecting a lot of rain from Debby. Floodline areas are really what folks are looking at, but also the possibility of having some sort of power outages as Debby is expected to dump massive amount of rain, inches worth of rain into the area. People going to the local grocery stores like the local Piggly Wiggly, that one in Chesterfield, trying to stock up on supplies they may need in case there are any power outages.
So I just came and grabbed me a little bit of stuff to go home because we have a couple of days. So we'll be ready for it.
And Government Master said just yesterday that there are a lot of precautions in place. He said when you see road blockages and things like that, please pay attention to them. He says if you see standing water, turn around, don't drown. That's some good advice. And also continue to monitor our weather department because we'll keep you weather aware throughout this entire storm of Debby. We're right here in York County. This is Richard Devane. We'll send it back to you.
And as we continue to track Debby, now is a good time to download the WCNC Charlotte mobile app and turn weather alerts on so you can be prepared for potential impacts. Just scan the QR code right there on your screen.
Right now, one person is fighting for their life after a shooting in East Charlotte. It happened hours ago on Dunlavin Way. Police telling us a car was involved but haven't given any details of what exactly happened.
A new man has now been sentenced to time behind bars in connection to a string of armed robberies across North Carolina. Now, according to court documents, back in 2022, H.T. Hackney delivery trucks were robbed roughly 9 times. Nearly $80,000 worth of cigarette cartons were stolen. Investigators connected Adrian Bryson to the crime. They say Bryson used to work for H.T. Hackney and targeted his former delivery routes. Bryson pleaded guilty and will serve at least 10 years in prison.
One man is now facing charges in connection to a deadly East Charlotte shooting. Kevin Zatino was arrested and charged with murder. The shooting happened Friday on Shamrock Drive. 3 people were shot and 57-year-old Jose Cruz was killed. Officers say they found the victims lying in the street and inside a home. Zatino now being held without bond. The Mecklenburg County Sheriff's Office now taking new steps to keep deputies safe. Sheriff Gary McFadden says they are now fitting outer carrier vests for select personnel. This comes nearly a week after CMPD sent an email giving all officers the choice to wear these vests. There's been a renewed push for these since the deadly Charlotte ambush in April that killed 4 officers. McFadden says he hopes to roll out the vests in the coming weeks.
A new concern today from parents following our buried investigation into coal ash near an Iredell County daycare. Some with kids attending tutor time of Mooresville reached out to us saying staff members never warned them their kids were regularly playing on top of and near a potentially toxic coal burning byproduct. The daycare is built over and around 100,000 tons of coal ash. Its ingredients include carcinogens and one is radioactive. After we exposed this, the daycare is now working to take action, but advocates say it's not nearly enough. One parent told WCNC Charlotte's Nate Morabito she's considering moving her child to a new daycare.
This is what reacting sounds like. Crews spent hours outside tutor time of Mooresville, adding dirt, then turf, and mesh fencing in the playground area. Less than a week after WCNC Charlotte exposed what's buried here.
Those parents need to be warned.
Initially unclear if the daycare ever warned parents of the potential risk to their kids' health.
Do the parents know that there's coal ash under here?
Not going to get roped into any of that, but thank you.
We now have that answer.
Did tutor time ever tell you about the coal ash that was there?
No, it was never mentioned.
Never?
Never.
WCNC Charlotte has agreed to protect this parent's identity since she's afraid of retaliation for speaking up. The mother says our reporting left her deeply concerned.
Very afraid.
Namely about her toddler's well-being, but also the daycare's lack of transparency.
That has to bother you that they didn't tell you.
It does. There was no disclosure.
And the failure of anyone to take responsibility for what's beneath and around these kids.
The ball was dropped so many times.
It all starts with Duke Energy. The utility legally sold coal ash that came from its nearby Marshall Steam Station as cheap fill dirt for construction projects decades ago. Not just here, but all across the area.
Is coal ash toxic?
No.
Since then, Duke Energy has repeatedly downplayed the potential for harm.
Several of coal ash's ingredients are toxic.
Even as experts and scientists warn of the dangers.
That makes coal ash toxic.
To limit the impact to the public, coal ash is supposed to be buried at least 1.5 feet underground. But during one of several visits to this site, I noticed what looked like exposed coal ash along that fence line where kids play every day. Our drone showed it too. So I alerted the daycare and state regulators. But advocates believe this is just a temporary fix. This is them covering up the true story.
I don't think it's safe.
Duke University professor Dr. Julia Kravchenko previously told us the only way to truly protect the kids from long-term exposure is to eliminate the risk completely.
These layers of coal ash, they should be removed.
This parent is grateful Tutor Time is taking some kind of initial action, even in the form of a reaction.
Don't want to take any chances here.
But she knows WCNC Charlotte has collected coal ash samples from a nearby median. Now we're just waiting on the results, and depending what they show.
If I could take him out today and afford to be out of work and keep him with me, absolutely.
She may react too and pull her child out of this daycare. Nate Morabito, WCNC Charlotte.
And Tutor Time sharing new information about his efforts with this statement saying, quote, "The safety of our families and staff is our top priority. We're working closely with environmental agencies to ensure that our school remains in compliance with all regulations, and we are committed to continuing to be a responsible employer for our staff and trustworthy service provider for the children in our care and their families." And our Nate Morabito continues to investigate the story and is awaiting results from our own testing.
And you can catch up on his previous reporting at WCNC.com or the WCNC Charlotte mobile app. Let's turn now to the forecast. We are expecting heavy rain as Debby continues to move.
Meteorologist Brittany Van Voorhees joins us now. And Brittany, break this down. When can we start seeing that heavy rain?
Well, heavy rain itself is mostly going to be on Thursday, but we're already starting to see some of those outermost bands from Debby. Here's the center of circulation here just off the coast of Charleston. If you notice here that center has moved ever so slightly to the east based on our data that we had even just 24 hours ago. Now, this is good for one reason and not so good for another reason. More time it spends over open ocean, the potential for Debby to get just a touch bit stronger. But with that slight track shift to the east, and I mean slight, we have started to see some of those rainfall totals drop ever so slightly. This does not mean that we do not still have the significant risk for flooding, because we absolutely do. But you can see a lot of that moisture starting to come in already, but the center is still off the coast. You can see it a little bit better here on our water vapor loop. Of course, what happens after a tropical system leaves is drier air eventually starts to work back in. So the weekend forecast has started to look a lot better as we look ahead to Friday, really and Saturday and Sunday. Here's your excessive rainfall outlook for Thursday. This is the first day we especially want you to stay weather aware. Notice the high impact for areas across the Charlotte metro, and then east of 77 we have that extreme. Again, this has been consistent. We have consistently talked about the fact that we would see more rain for areas east and southeast of the city and lesser rain up toward the mountains and foothills. On Friday, pretty much everyone at that medium risk. Remember, we've seen a lot of rain over the past few weeks, so this is going to impact pretty much everyone, but just some areas more than others. Low risk here for some isolated power outages due to some gusty winds around 30 to 35 miles per hour, especially on Thursday. Again, you can see that wind impact, but our biggest one, of course, locally is going to remain flooding. So Thursday, when can you expect the rain? Well, pretty much off and on for much of the day. The impact, heavy rain leading to localized flooding. Best thing you can do is stay weather aware. I mentioned this earlier in the newscast, but if you know that your neighborhood is prone to flooding, maybe you see some leaves and mess kind of clogging up the storm drains, try to go ahead and take care of some of that. Be a good neighbor, be an aware neighbor as well. If you know your backyard is prone to flooding, maybe take those precautions now, making sure that anything important, is off the ground, things of that nature. And the wind gusts won't be too bad, but if you have anything outdoors like lawn furniture you don't want soaked or maybe just moved around a bit, time to bring that inside is going to be today. So here we are tomorrow morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, just like clockwork. We're expecting the heavy rain to start mainly along the southeastern portion of Mecklenburg County. Eventually heavy rain moves even further in as we get closer to the middle part of the morning and pretty much stays that way off and on for the majority of the day. What you'll notice as we get toward Friday morning is some of that drier air gets swept past. We might see an isolated shower or storm lingering into late Friday, but the majority of that rain heavy tomorrow and again toward Friday morning. So Thursday is the main day. We want you to stay weather aware due to that heavy rain, virtually off and on rain potential for the entirety of the day. Thankfully, we're starting to trend a little bit lighter with the rain by the second half of Friday. And then, as I mentioned, the weekend looks fantastic. So everybody just needs to be aware of the heavy rain, the localized flooding risk for Thursday. It'll be wrapped up pretty quickly by the second half of Friday, and then we can enjoy that weekend. Best way to stay safe as always, weather aware with the WCNC Charlotte team.
All right, thank you, Brittany. Well, we're now nearly 2 weeks into the summer games, and there are still plenty of Olympians with Carolina connections to look out for.
And in less than an hour, Quincy Hall may soon become the second ever South Carolina Gamecock to take home an Olympic medal in the 400-meter race. This is Hall's first Olympics.
And 10 minutes after Hall hits the track, the U.S. women's basketball team take the hardwood against Nigeria in the quarterfinal. Keep an eye out for South Carolina native Aja Wilson. Over the last 3 games, Wilson has been averaging a little more than 20 points a game.
Let's take a look now at the latest medal count from Paris. Up at the top, Team USA with 90 medals. And, well, just about 90 medals, 25 gold, 33 silver, 32 bronze. China is in second with 62 medals now. And host country France, Great Britain, and Australia round out the top 5. We're seeing a lot of these athletes win medals, but many people are asking us why they aren't seeing any of those medal ceremonies.
WCNC Charlotte's Megan Bragg is here to verify.
And guys, we've gotten several emails on this. So can you watch the medal ceremonies? Well, we did reach out to NBC to get answers.
In an email, NBC told us there is a Champions Medal Plaza where all the medalists are brought throughout the games. That is not broadcast, but stations here in Paris can cover it.
They went on to say athletes receiving their medals may not always be on the broadcast. In past games, when the Olympic Channel was operational, they were shown on there.
There is a section on NBC's streaming platform, Peacock, where you can see featured medal ceremonies. NBCOlympics.com also has a section on its website that features Olympic ceremony highlights. So we can verify that, yes, there are several options where you can watch the medal ceremonies. However, they may not be broadcast on your TV. With your Verify, I'm Megan Bragg.
And this Verify report all started because someone asked us about the medal ceremonies.
So we want to urge you, keep sending your questions in. That's what our Verify segments are for. You can email them to verify@wcnc.com or reach out to any of us on social media.
Thank you for joining us for the news at 2:30. You can find these stories and more on our website and on the WCNC Charlotte mobile app.
And we'll be back with more of the day's top headlines at 6 on WCNC Charlotte. Have a great Wednesday.